Hello and welcome to Every Horror Movie on Netflix, the show where we watch, review, and discuss every horror movie on Netflix. I'm Steven. I'm joined here as always by Patrick.
Hello.
And Chris. What the fuck was that?
My Mrs. Doubtfire noise.
Oh, and why?
I just thought of it.
Okay. And we're here today to discuss the 2020 Max Landis written film starring Chloë Grace Moretz, Shadow in the Cloud. But first, we'd like to do a little horror catch-up and talk about what other horror-related things we've been watching, reading, experiencing, etc. I'll kick it off. I know Patrick and I both saw the Ty West's new film, the third film in the X trilogy, MAXXXINE. Mm-hmm. What'd you think of that one, Patrick?
I mean, it's the weakest of the trilogy, easily. But I feel like I enjoyed it more than most seemed to have. It has a very chaotic energy. There's a lot going on. The friend that I saw it with compared it to a Ryan Murphy production, which made a ton of sense to me in the way that like an American Horror Story season can just careen from like concept to concept and subplot to subplot. That said, it was still very fun to me, and it was a satisfying enough end to the trilogy. If anything, I just feel like it kind of points out Pearl as like a fluke in West's entire filmography, because it's the most. I mean, he's a great visual filmmaker. He's great at kind of replicating the hallmarks of a certain era of filmmaking. But I've never seen him do anything like as emotionally resonant and as emotionally honest as Pearl, and it feels now at this point like just kind of a fluke in the middle of this trilogy, and I feel like it seems more shaped by Mia Goth's influence than anything. But you know, all things considered, fine, not great. What did you think?
You didn't think Cabin Fever 2 Spring Fever was emotionally raw?
Get out of here.
I would probably give it a C if I had to give it a letter grade. Like, I had enough fun with sort of the throwback vibe of it. You know, it has that feel of like 80s LA sleaze movies. You know, there are some fun and shocking gore moments in it, but the pace is kind of oddly languid, and I feel like Maxine doesn't have as much agency in this as she does in or as Mia Goth does in either of the previous two films. So I thought that was a little bit kind of out of line. And then the ending was just so over the top that it completely threw me, and I think it was also very badly shot and edited too. Like, I know movies aren't usually shot in sequence, but it had me feeling like they were kind of running out of time and money all of a sudden. But then again, you know, this has a lot of giallo vibes, and those movies are always kind of, the big bad reveal is always kind of weird and disappointing and jarring anyway. So, you know, maybe that was intentional. I'm not sure. It didn't work for me. It's a film that I know I definitely will not ever revisit in the way that I have X and Pearl. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, cool that we got this kind of weirdo trilogy in, you know, what, like 2 years time? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to revisit it, if only because it was so chaotic that I felt like I missed a lot of stuff along the way. And I have a little bit of an effect of like, what the fuck did I even watch? I need to like review the tape, you know, but I don't see it having like high rewatch potential beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, you probably didn't miss much. I don't think there's a lot going on here because there is quite a bit of misdirection that ultimately it only pays off if you like the reveal at the end, and I didn't. It sounds like you weren't a huge fan of it either.
I liked it well enough. It was still a bit implausible to me without really delving into the specifics of it.
Yeah, great performances, though. That's the last thing I'll say about it. I mean, Giancarlo Esposito steals the show. Kevin Bacon, people, you know, your mileage may vary on how you feel about Kevin Bacon's accent in this movie. It's giving it's giving John Voight in Anaconda a little bit. I thought it was fucking fantastic with his, you know, Jake Gittes get up, and you know, he's even got the patch on his nose at one point. It's very Chinatown.
The MVP to me, though, is Elizabeth Debicki, who I love in a lot of different things, but she's just
and her riding boots.
outfits were amazing. I loved it.
You know, this is like a common phenomenon where you have the first two parts of a trilogy and you get all excited, and then the third one just drops the ball. Happens countless times.
Oh yeah, this has big like Dark Knight Rises, Rise of Skywalker, kind
Spider-Man
of. Actually,
3.
it's not as bad as any of those.
Is
it better or worse than Spider-Man 3? Worse. It has to be worse.
It's way better than Spider-Man 3.
I would say better than Spider-Man 3.
Wow.
But it's such a departure for the franchise in so many ways. I mean, it's a much like the first two films are like so contained. I mean, because they were COVID movies, so there's maybe 10 characters in the whole movie, and each of those. And here we're going out into the world, you know. So I give it some points at least for broadening its scope, even if it wasn't entirely successful in doing that. It was a cool swing. I like an attempt at, you know, progression.
Yeah.
If you're gonna make a franchise like this. So, anything else, Patrick?
Well, actually, after our last episode, after we recorded the Anaconda episode, Chris and I watched Man's Best Friend.
Steven was invited.
Steven was invited. He said, no, I got to sleep.
He said no to life.
I've had enough creature feature for tonight.
I'll catch it on Tubi. Don't worry. It's still on my list.
We're going to watch it tonight.
Is that the new tradition?
But anyways, y'all, I forget, Chris, what context did you even bring Man's Best Friend up in?
Because we were talking about creature features. So we
Okay,
watched
yeah.
Anaconda, and I was like, that's not a genre I really have dabbled much in. And I was like, oh, but there's Man's Best Friend.
Yeah.
That's a creature feature, I think.
And you know what? I loved it. It probably helped that I was under the influence of marijuana, but I actually thought it was a mostly pretty decent and well-made film for the silliness of it all. Lance Henriksen, our king, is amazing in it. There's an incredibly well-trained dog, or multiple very well-trained dogs in it, playing the man's best friend. I felt so bad for the fucking dog because it was really sweet at first, and then it just turns into a monster by no choice of its own.
It's becoming destabilized.
Yeah. And yeah, it was just surprisingly well constructed for what it was. I had a great time with it. So thank you for that.
I had low expectations going into that rewatch because, you know, a movie like that you saw before you refined your palate, you never know how it's going to hold up. But I actually liked it more.
Is it going to be like the Boondock Saints or something?
Right. Yeah, it actually, I liked it more on this watch than maybe ever before. I think it's not just fun, but it's it's not like it's not emotionally raw like Cabin Fever 2, but but it's the fundamentals are good. The story has good fundamentals, and you have this cute dog that just gets you emotionally invested within the first 10 minutes. And then you're in. So
well, and I was even impressed just by like the storytelling of like the action sequences. They were surprisingly well choreographed, constructed, shot. Like it was the action was clear and easy to read for me, which is far from a given in this sort of thing. You know?
So next on my list is Child's Play 2, because that's actually from the same director.
Oh wow.
So I haven't seen that.
Who's the director?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
I think he
DVD's right there.
John LaFia, or Lafia, perhaps.
Yeah,
spelled like mafia except with an L.
So we read it up. See, that's a great moment. We didn't have to get our phones out. We didn't have to Google
God
it.
bless physical media.
We got the fucking DVD right at arm's reach. That's a movie you want to have at arm's reach.
I remember really enjoying Child's Play 2, actually. I feel like it's the one where like they really dial in Chucky as Chucky. Is that the one that ends in the factory? Do you remember, Steven? Yeah,
I think so.
Okay. That's fun shit. That's fun shit.
Yeah, that's the first one where it feels like you really kind of get a whiff of what Don Mancini is going to do. Mm-hmm. Starting to have a little more fun, a little more chaotic energy. Yeah. A little
starting
sillier.
to make Chucky more of a fucking foul-mouthed little piece of shit.
Uh-huh.
I mean, not that he's not in the first movie. But anyway, we also had a big group experience. Well, actually, not as a group.
We didn't see it together.
We watched it completely. We all watched it completely separately.
We all watched it with our real friends.
Yeah.
In fact, I think Chris went by himself.
I went with all my friends.
But we saw Longlegs.
Longlegs.
And I think we all pretty much liked it.
I think we all are pretty
some
much
caveats
on the same. I think we all have slightly different caveats about it, but I think we'd probably all give it the same letter grade.
I don't know. A B.
I was going to give it a B plus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd probably go with B-. So yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, I mean, by now, if you wanted to see Longlegs, you've probably seen it, though, it's not necessary for us to get into spoilers or anything. But my general take on it is, it's pretty weak on story and character, but it totally makes up for it with vibes. This movie, after a while, just kind of, to me, felt like a very vivid nightmare, and even not exactly knowing the motivation of Longlegs himself, at least not as thoroughly as you might if this movie were written and directed by someone else. I still found him to be really kind of insidious and scary and also silly at times, but he definitely haunted my dreams the night after seeing this. So to me, that's a mark of something that really worked on some deep level, and I'm definitely going to revisit it when it comes out for home viewing. What did you think of it, Patrick?
My main point of contention with it is actually Longlegs. I just really struggled with the character, even though, bless them for not giving him a ton of screen time, because the character is a lot, but he still obviously dominates it. You can't not compare this to Silence of the Lambs, and he dominates it the same way that Hannibal does in Silence of the Lambs, but I still found the character really silly and kind of Joker-ish, and it didn't work for me. What did work for me is I think Oz Perkins can direct a fucking film. That's pretty well established at this point. I thought Micah Monroe was amazing in it, and I would love to see her in more stuff. It was a lot of, there were a lot of parts that I enjoyed, and they didn't quite add up to a cohesive shit your pants whole to me, but there were enough individual elements I liked to still be perks to Perkins, and I'm excited to see what he does next, because I feel like he has gotten better and better with each film. What was your take, Chris?
Yeah, I liked it. I don't actually have, it's not a movie that I'm like, oh, I really want to talk about this movie. It's it's there.
Yeah. It's a hard movie to talk about.
Well, it's I feel like so much of it was familiar, not just because it's evocative of Silence of the Lambs or whatever, but just all these Netflix indie horror movies we've watched, so many of them cover the same ground in various ways, I felt, and but it was very well executed. It was good. I thought that it was trying too hard in a few places, Longlegs maybe being one of them, but the vibe was good. I liked the subtle parts. It was spooky enough. Anyone who says it's not scary or not a horror movie, I don't know what they're engaged with.
That puzzles me. Yeah. Not that it's the scariest thing I've ever seen, but it's just a puzzling take to me.
Yeah. But no, it was good, and I'm very excited and grateful that it did really well. It's number 2 at the box office, behind Despicable Me 4. I guess you can't compete with Despicable Me 4. You can't compete with those minions.
Minions rule the world, man.
Babies love them. Boomers love them. But for what it is, being such a weird, small, not really accessible film that got that sort of commercial success, I think is very encouraging. And also, my screening had 20 minutes of trailers before it for other small budget indie movies that look really interesting. So
oh my god, yeah, same in my screening.
Yeah, hopefully there's some downwind economic boom here. Maybe Longlegs has saved the mid-budget movie.
I hope. There's a lot of promising stuff coming this summer. You probably saw trailers for Oddity, which is coming to Shudder. Actually, will be on Shudder by the time this drops, I think. Cuckoo from the director of Lose, a movie I really liked. Yeah, I'm excited. I hope it's cool to see these movies actually coming to multiplexes and not. I mean, I love art house theaters, but they're kind of dying off around here. So it's great that I can just drive 10 minutes up to the road to the Cinemark to see something that previously I would have had to go to the main art theater in Royal Oak for.
Yeah, I mean, I was stunned that I saw the TV Glow got. I mean, neither of you saw that, but I think you both have at least a rudimentary sense of how weird that is, and sort of how out of place it was for a multiplex. Did you see the Red Band trailer for Alien Romulus? I know you're stoked for that one.
I was texting when that was on. I don't give a fuck about that.
Wow,
I'm stoked.
What have you become, Chris?
Yeah,
he wants the third part of the David's trilogy more than I do now.
Yeah, I really have grown.
To finish
you guys are sick.
the trilogy.
I really have grown.
I'm stoked for Romulus.
I really have grown as a human and a film consumer probably since we started doing this show. And I used to think Steven was too stuffy and pretentious with his film takes, and now
you're way worse now.
Now I'm like, yeah, no, I'm sick of all this popcorn bullshit.
So. All right. Well, speaking of popcorn bullshit, we're here today.
I gotta tell you what else I saw.
Oh, what else did you see, Chris? I'm sorry. How rude of me.
What popcorn bullshit did you watch?
A couple things. I've been busy in the last month, but I watched The Testament of Dr. Mabuse from Fritz Lang from 1931, I think, German film. I would say it definitely qualifies as a horror film, and it was damn good. And I was like, I'm gonna have to watch more films from that era, particularly American films. Like I've seen, the Universal horror movies of that era, but not much else. But technically, dramatically, thematically, this German film seemed to just be miles ahead of anything I've seen from Hollywood at the same time. So I was really impressed. And it was spooky. Check it out.
What, the 1931 you said?
Yeah.
So it's not a silent film.
It's
then,
not.
Is it? Well,
no.
I've never seen a talkie from Fritz Lang. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's really good. And Dr. Mabuse as a character, he made like 3 movies that are all like 3 hours long about or something like
franchise.
that.
Wow.
But he's evil. He's an evil like psychic genius.
Is he more evil than Longlegs?
Similar to Longlegs, because in the Testament of Dr. Mabuse, he dies, spoiler alert, very early on.
Oh.
But his crimes continue.
Oh.
Much like Longlegs. Because he has a corrupt influence. It's sort of a Nazi allegory, a little bit. Which is funny because I guess... who was the propagandist? The Nazi propagandist.
Goebbels?
Yes, right? He was the propagandist.
I think
right?
so, yeah.
Yeah, well,
I think
Goebbels, apparently Goebbels saw it and was like, this is a great film. And he thought that the Nazi party was like the Law and Order side that's in the movie. He thought they was the good guys when he saw it. So interesting film. I also went on a trip to California, and I went to the filming locations for The Birds. I went to the schoolhouse and church from The Birds, and I went to the lighthouse from The Fog, and that was interesting.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
Didn't you go to Bodega Bay as well?
Didn't make it to Bodega Bay.
Okay.
Made it to Bodega, which is 5 miles inland from Bodega Bay. But we were running short on time. But yeah, saw the schoolhouse, and it was a little underwhelming, I hate to say. So that's all I got. What the hell did we watch for this episode?
Nice to hear what you did on your summer vacation. Yeah, we watched, this was my choice, Shadow in the Cloud, 2020 film that I think maybe didn't come out until a year later.
That's correct.
Direct to streaming. This is co-written by Max Landis and someone I've never heard of previously, Roseanne Liang. This is about the set during World War II. A pilot with a case with some classified materials in it boards a bomber and is subjected to some of the most ludicrous locker room talk I've ever heard in my life. She gets she's not taken very seriously by the crew. They suspect her credentials. They kind of send her down into a turret or whatever the hell you call those things.
That is what you call it, yeah.
It is what you call it. And she gets trapped in there, and it turns out that there's something else on the plane. It's got kind of a, what's that Twilight Zone episode, Nightmare at however many thousand feet vibes to it. Yeah.
So literally, because it's like there's a gremlin on the wing. And is what it is. And I mean, they must have felt they were real clever with that one. But yeah, there's a gremlin on the wing, and no one believes her.
Well, and there's that's not a spoiler in the least, because there's a little like animated film at the beginning explaining what gremlins are, which I did not know. Apparently you learned this at the World War II Museum, Stephen, and I either forgot it or didn't read the same thing that you did. But like, this was a creature that was invented in the early days of aircraft to explain aircraft equipment malfunctions, they'd be like, oh, it's a fucking gremlin in the wing, you
Yeah.
know? And so this is like an extrapolation upon that concept of the time.
And it's really more of an excuse for poor behavior on the parts of those involved in flying the plane. You know, they're drunk on the job or whatever. It must have been a gremlin.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you
Fell asleep at the
know,
wheel.
Gremlins Don't Chew Bubblegum was a book I read as a child with the Bailey School Kids. You ever read the Bailey School Kids?
No, I remember those covers. Though.
Vampires don't wear polka dots. Dracula doesn't wear tennis shoes. I don't know what the other titles were, but it's this group of kids in their school, and every book, there's like a new hire at their elementary school, and they're like, oh, this guy's a fucking monster. He's a werewolf. He's a mummy. He's a this. He's a that. She's a gremlin. And they're like, that's silly. Gremlins don't chew bubble gum, blah, 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 blah. But I think it's usually a spooky or, but there was a gremlin who's making things short out and stuff. So I've been indoctrinated from a young age to know what a gremlin is and what they can do to your electronics.
Well, I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I grew up on the movie Gremlins.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of gremlin activity in my life since a very young age, and I've always had a fondness for them.
Well, that was the thing that kind of surprised me, because I thought, because I mean, obviously gremlin is a word that's used, I mean, it's an English word. It's used to describe like a creepy little person or creature or whatever.
Or a car.
Or a car, yeah, exactly. But I don't think I've ever seen like a horror movie with a gremlin in it before, other than Gremlins. And so at first I was like, how did they get away with this? Like, I figured that was a trademark at this point. But no, it's got a much longer lineage than the movie Gremlins.
Yeah, so this is kind of it's a weird movie.
Very weird.
It is a very brisk, I think without credits, it's under 80 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's very fast paced. It's more stylish. It's stylish in a way that I wasn't expecting. There's like a heavy 80s synth soundtrack, which I thought, you know, that can feel kind of overdone sometimes, but I thought it really worked for this movie. We've got a little bit of kind of the lurid, like red and green light kind of Carpenter vibe going on in here too. But a majority of the movie we spend with Chloë Grace Moretz's character, Officer Garrett. Is that correct?
Something like that.
Down in the cockpit, she gets trapped in there. The handle breaks off the door to get out, and we meet all these vile men on the plane, you know, as soon as she arrives. But once they send her down there, we only ever hear them over the intercom, and it can be very, I don't know. For me, it's like I didn't spend enough time with any of these people to know who is who and to remember whose voice is the pilots or the co-pilot or the whatever the fuck.
Other than the good one, there's a good one.
There's one good one.
It goes from locker room talk to car talk.
It definitely does. Big click and clack vibes down there in the turret. Yeah, and I guess it's worth mentioning too that the satchel, the radio case that has whatever this classified information that Garrett has brought with her on the plane is not down in the turret with her. It's
in like the opposite turret, I think, for safekeeping with another gunner.
Is it, or is it just on the main deck of the plane?
Pretty sure it's in a turret.
Because there's some drama about, you know, and we'll get into it as they start to even further doubt her credibility, and it turns out they have some reason to. There's some drama about because she can't see what's going on, and they're talking about cracking open the case, and
it's theater of the mind, really.
It is theater of the mind. This is a radio play.
It is
disguised as a movie.
But I really appreciate that sort of economical production where you know it's you can tell they made this movie on just a shoestring budget, and you have Chloë Grace Moretz, and it's like she's the star of the movie, but it's like how many days did she really have to work, because you know 80% of the movie is her in this one seat basically in the turret. You know, spoiler alert, she gets out eventually and does some stuff, but so much of the movie, I would say half the movie, if not more, is her sitting in one chair.
I think I checked it. It's less than half, but it's a lot.
It's a lot. Doing the dialogue, and then
hour.
You know other people you can't see.
It's Locke. It's I don't know. I'm trying to think of other like famous,
Buried.
like Barry.
Buried.
Oh, Barry.
Ryan Reynolds movie.
I never saw that.
Yeah, it's kind of a one. Even though there are other characters, it's a one-hander for the bulk of it. Which is really interesting.
Yeah, so many actors just doing a hell of a lot of voiceover for this. Mm-hmm. But I mean, the circumstances under which this were made are kind of crazy because. So, as Steven mentioned at the top of the podcast, Max Landis wrote this, screenwriter of
the
Chronicle.
Evil Max Landis. I know we're supposed to cool down our rhetoric, but I'm not going to be kind to him.
I can't even. The thing is, I can't even remember how or why I decided he was a villain. I just know he is.
Well,
he's
quite thoroughly disgraced at this point for I think abusing a lot of women. I don't remember the details either, but he's
father like son, you know.
Yeah, his career is very dead at this point. But anyways, he wrote this movie. And I believe the allegations against him came out after it had already had a director and star and everything associated with it. And at least according to Chloe, the co-writer director Roseanne Lang came in and rewrote this several times. It went through a lot of reworking before it came to the form that we saw it in. Which
makes an insane amount of sense, actually, because Chris texted me last night, "Why'd you make me watch this woke movie?" I was like, really, a Max Landis movie? Woke?
So listen. We've been criticized in our reviews for being too woke. I think we've done enough shows that people know we often, if not always, approach films from a feminist perspective, despite being three bros. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna ruin that reputation and cash in all my goodwill I've accumulated for all these years.
Here we go.
I thought that the feminist stuff in this movie was just so overwrought and cringy.
It was ridiculous. This is a movie where the only way that you can be taken seriously as a woman is if you behave like a man. And that's such an old fucking trope. It seems like at the beginning that's exactly what this movie is trying not to say, and then it just does it.
That's an interesting take, and maybe we can get more into it in the spoiler room. But some of it's of the time where it's the boys' club of airmen, and who's this little thing getting on our plane, and let's have a laugh and let's make fun of her or whatever, and that's fine. But then at some point, it just it's beating the thing to death, and it goes through the whole up until the very end of the movie, and I'm like, all right, and I can appreciate the intent, and I think there's a historical significance to what they're trying to do. We'll get into all that, but what can I say? I thought it was cringe. Take away my woke card.
You've been relieved, cured of the woke mind virus.
I'm cured of the woke mind virus.
I mean, it's definitely feminist, and it definitely goes hard on that. But I feel like it's mostly doing that through this sort of ridiculous locker room talk we've been talking about, kind of reflecting back the mirror image of feminism. I don't know. That's a weird way to say it. But.
Yes and no. I mean, there's some speeches in this movie. Well, there's one speech in this movie that I felt was a little overwrought. On the feminist side, it felt like it was overcompensating for whatever this looked like when Max Landis handed it in.
I think so too, and that was kind of why I started talking about the strange production process, because I definitely feel like they started reacting to that. I mean, it's basically has been explicitly stated by Moretz that they started, course correcting for that.
Have you guys seen Max Landis' other stuff or read it?
I think I've seen something he did besides Chronicle, but I forget what it was now.
He did American Ultra, which I didn't see, but it just looked like... I gotta look him up. I don't know.
Let's find out.
I've seen him on... He was on Red Letter Media quite a bit back in the day, and of course they no longer associate with him. But that's primarily what I know him from.
But I ask because just because he's a pest in real life doesn't mean that he didn't write a overly feminist script. I mean, you can look at Joss Whedon or other people who are sort of mask or compensate for what they're actually like with this, I'm a good guy because I wrote this.
Certainly. I just haven't observed that in anything of his that I did see, and I haven't really heard any reputation of him doing that. The way Joss Whedon was known as America's feminist woke, Hollywood's woke feminist.
The most feminist filmmaker working today, Joss Whedon.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, and it's like I said, I don't want to go overboard in my criticism of this either, but I just at a point, and it does involve like speeches, because I feel like there's just multiple scenes one after another where she's like, let me tell you something. I am this, and this. I can do this as well as you. And then it's like the next scene, it happens again. And she's like, I'll have you know this, or whatever.
So I only remember that happening one time, and it's a sensible escalation at that point, because she's just been getting fucking, like, harassed by these dudes incessantly over her radio since she boarded the plane. And so it feels sensible that she would be like, all right, listen up, motherfucker, like, let's try a different communication strategy to shut this down. And there's just more bullshit from them. I guess I'll agree with you in the sense that, like, the locker room talk was sort of ridiculous. There was so much of it. It was so over the top. And I mean, locker room talk is over the top.
It is, but like, this is like,
I wouldn't know. I've never done it.
There was someone at one point describes her as hotter than Satan's cock.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I was like, damn. There's a lot of it, and I was very much like, okay, I get the idea.
And there's so much like
the idea.
There's so much like feminine panic too. That's like there's no way that people actually behaved this way in 1943 in the military. Like the number of times they're like freaked out that a woman would be on the plane at all in any capacity, even just as like a passenger. They're constantly, referring to her as, belittling her, calling her a dame. I get it.
They doubt that she's in the Air Force.
And it's like every single guy on the plane except the one.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a little too much, I think. Too much mustard.
I actually find it believable. Like,
yeah.
We've come a long fucking way, man.
I kind of believe it too.
I don't know that they would be doing it in quite the extreme language that they do in this movie, but I do believe that plane would probably have about the same percentage of people taking that attitude towards a woman getting on board, and like, a pilot's jacket and saying she's in the Air Force and shit.
So I actually did some research. So her character is based on like a real thing that existed, like all these like women, and you see them in the end credits, like this like auxiliary air force basically that was created in World War II, and they did a whole bunch of shit normal pilots would do, except they didn't do combat missions, but they would do all the maintenance on the planes and move the planes around. Like she talks about how she has piloting experience, and the idea is, well, if we can have a woman fly the plane from point A to point B, that's a pilot we can have on the front line, fighting, etc. And there were apparently efforts in Congress, I forget all the details, to like actually make this more of like an established military unit or folded into the actual Air Force. And like sexism, like they voted it down by like 19 votes or something in Congress. So I totally believe that, I don't know what the attitudes of like, young servicemen would be, but there are definitely attitudes. They're like, oh, what are you doing here? This isn't for you. So, and
I get it that like this is a boys' club, but I think, and it's a movie, so of course it's going to exaggerate. But it felt like 50% too over the top for me.
It was a bit,
especially
over the top.
Initial cavalcade of what we're calling locker room talk.
Yeah. I like how that's just become the shorthand now. But yeah, that did get to me a bit, but just as it was really starting to bother me, we kind of shifted gears and I forgot about it.
Yeah, so we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, and maybe this is why people complain about us being too woke. And fuck you if that's your opinion. We don't want you to listen to our show.
You're
not welcome.
We're medium
here.
woke. I forget where that even came from, but we're medium woke.
That's another review says we're medium woke.
That's a great Robert Forster movie.
But they're quoting us though, aren't they?
What?
Aren't they quoting us in that review? I feel like we said we were medium woke on the show.
I'll give our reviewer credit.
Oh yeah, the reviewer was definitely like making a joke. Like, I actually do like how medium woke they are.
So we're down in the turret. She gets stuck. Actually, kind of a lot happens down there. So she gets a whiff of this gremlin on the wing. And doesn't say anything at first. She has like an initial encounter with it where she almost loses her finger, which was absolutely, I it worked for me.
Yeah.
You know, the power of the movies, movie magic. I was squirming in my seat.
That was cringy in the classical definition of cringy.
So as this is going on, she also spots a plane, a Japanese plane below them. They don't believe her. She's gradually losing credibility, and as this is happening, everyone else on the plane is starting to realize that she's not who she said she was. Like the signs start to show. She begins the movie with an accent, and she loses the accent while she's talking over the intercom. It turns out she claimed to be from New Zealand.
No,
New
British.
Zealander or British, because they start off in New Zealand. So yeah, she claimed to be British, and then she slips back into her native American accent.
Which, if I can interject on that specific point for just a moment, that's
sure.
one thing that I'll give huge credit to. One of many things I'll give a lot of credit to Moretz for is her accent. She's got the British accent. It starts to slip, and I was like, oh, that sounded really good, and now it's like fading, but it's supposed to, because she's slipping, because I think she's like shooting a plane or something. Or something dramatic is happening. Yeah. And she's transitioning out of doing this fake British accent. And I was like, okay, good job, Chloe.
I don't know that I've ever seen her in anything. What would I have seen her in? I know the name.
Kick-Ass.
Kick-Ass.
I didn't see Kick-Ass.
The Let the Right One In remake.
Definitely didn't see that.
Actually, it was pretty good.
Carrie remake.
Remake. Yeah, I feel like there's other even like actually better stuff she's been in, but
I was really really impressed with her. I thought
great.
she kicked ass in this movie.
Yeah.
Especially there are a fair number of pretty intense action sequences, and they don't always look as believable as they should, but her performance grounded them in just a really impressive way. I will definitely seek out more of her work.
Yeah.
All right, what are you gonna watch first? Carrie remake, or the
sure.
Let the Right One In remake?
True Grit. Or no, that's Haley Steinfeld. Never mind.
Look at him mixing women. All women look the same.
Yeah, they all look the same.
Yeah, no, actually, I do want to see all of the iterations of Carrie.
We're shedding all the wokeness today. Yes, we're done. We're turning the page on wokeness.
All women look the same. That's actually a woke take.
Oh, Biden tells me to cool down the rhetoric, and I'm heating it up.
She's in fucking Hugo.
I did. She's probably like a kid in that, right?
Yeah, I mean, she was definitely a child star.
She's just a child.
It's kind of. I'm actually sort of surprised and happy for her that she made it out of child stardom, because she was a great child actress. But I was like, that doesn't stick very often for the long term.
Yeah. We don't see the lead of that movie Hugo in too many things these days. He's often in bit parts. Wasn't he in
He was Ender.
Dr. Sleep?
Ender's Game. Oh, was he?
I feel like he was part of the. Oh no, maybe that's not what. Anyway, I've seen him in some like borderline background roles and stuff recently. It's kind of disappointing, but anyway, I don't really know how to talk about. I know there's stuff we can talk about before we go to the spoiler room, but I don't know how to get us there.
Can we talk about the Gremlins?
Yeah, let's talk about the Gremlins.
Just
what do they look
the
like?
Visual, sort of. When I first saw one, I was like, that looks like a gremlin, like a Joe Dante gremlin. You get a closer look, and it's like, okay, no, it's not. But it's like
a bat.
A bat-like creature. It has a really weird fucking mouth.
Skinny bat.
Yeah, very rodent-like.
Yeah, it's got wings. But it's got a long monkey tail.
Yeah, flying monkey.
Yeah. They're weird. I like the design.
Cryptids.
I even sort of I thought the CG was decent for a movie working with the resources that this movie was working with.
There's spots where it looks surprisingly good, and then there's spots where it looks like an Asylum movie.
No, yeah, this looked like an Asylum movie almost throughout. I
really?
Thought. Yeah.
Huh.
I would be a little kinder than that. I wouldn't say almost throughout.
Even from like the first shot, and maybe that's the thing. It's like
the first shot of the bomber does not look
good. And
it looks like Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow.
I feel like that hurts you a lot. Like, I feel like you can get away with having CG shots that aren't convincing. Take, for example, Jurassic Park. If you the first thing you see of the dinosaurs actually is kind of unconvincing CG in Jurassic Park, so maybe a bad example. But I feel like you can get away if you like set it up and it's like you establish, okay, this is real, I believe this is real, and then you start playing around with the CG. But if the first thing you see looks like a these Facebook ads I get. They're like, learn Unreal Engine in 3 minutes or something. And that's what the plane looks like. I'm already like, okay, I feel like I feel like I can see the MacBook that this whole movie was made on. So no, I didn't like the CG.
It doesn't start out on a strong note. I mean, there were some shots. As I got more invested in, this character and in what was going on the plane, and there's a fair amount of suspense just sort of in the mystery of like what could it possibly be that she is that she's brought on the plane with her.
And boy, you will not guess.
You will not guess, but we're going to be talking about one of the most infamous EHMON movies in the spoiler room as a comparison to this. I'll just tease that.
That's a good teaser.
Or famous, depending on
I hope it starts as much of a fight.
I don't need that right now. We need to come together. We need to come together. Cool down the rhetoric.
We need unity.
It's going to be so outdated when this episode comes out, whenever it comes out, that we're like quoting Biden talking about the Trump assassination.
What if he gets shot again between now and when this comes out?
Dude, I'm gonna have to fire you like that guy from Tenacious D if you keep it up over there.
Who are you, Lee Harker?
No, it's okay. Something about that's funny that we may just cut out of the episode, but I'll bring it up just for like historical context of where we are in this very moment. I keep a running list next to my laptop of like stuff that I want to remember for when we record, that I've watched or read or whatever. And the first two things I wrote for this month were the debate. And then not what, like a week later, I crossed it out and just wrote assassination attempt. Like, to talk about the real life horror that we're experiencing in the past month.
Yeah.
So God only knows how many more words I'm going to cross out and have to replace by the time this even airs. What a time to be alive. Should we review this movie?
Let's review this movie.
Let's review this movie. And Joe says cool it down, so I'm going to cool down and be a little kinder than I would normally be with a film like this. I'm going to go right out the gate. I'll start. I'm going to give this a cue it. I had a lot of fun with it. It's too short to wear out its welcome. Yeah, some of the gender politics of it all are a little bit awkward, but certainly less so than if the script hadn't been rewritten. Apparently, there were some action sequences in this that, while ridiculous and while not entirely convincing, still had me, proverbially on the edge of my seat. The creatures are cool, that was the promise to me. I'd heard about this movie and that it was like a low-key creature feature, and that part of it, while absolutely insane and ridiculous, really did kind of work and generate some thrills for me. So, yeah, again, I'm going to give Shadow in the Cloud a cue it. Patrick.
I'm going to go view it, and I'm also gonna give this sort of a high distinction of saying like this is what I'm watching every horror movie on Netflix for, and this probably may not make sense to the listener if you haven't seen the movie, because this goes in so many sort of odd directions that you're not necessarily gonna expect, and we can't really talk about it quite yet. But by the end of this movie, I was kind of like hooting, just like cackling to myself, and not in like a scornful or derisive way towards the film, but I was just like, this is insane, and just props to y'all for putting together this fucking World War II creature feature. And I had a good time with it. It flies right by. Moretz anchors the quieter stuff really well. It might not look the fucking best, but it is fairly low budget, and they were working under some kind of weird constraints with this, with Landis dropping out, low budget, tight shooting schedule, short shooting schedule, pandemic. This is presented by Redbox, which will tell you some things.
I missed that.
The Redbox logo is the first thing you see, I think, or maybe the second thing you see.
Really? I mean, there were too many production logos to speak of.
Yeah.
The movie, there's production logos, then the cartoon, and then more production logo.
Yeah.
So I've never seen that before.
But yeah, this is just kind of like the very weird and mostly satisfying thrill ride that I want out of just watching a random horror movie on Netflix. So thanks, Steven. Chris,
you know what? I'm gonna cool it down even further. I'm gonna give it a view it too. I'm gonna
bump it up.
What?
Bump it up to a view. You just like that context was enough to push me over the edge, because you're right. If I'm really thinking in the scope of this journey and all of the horrible bullshit that we've had to watch, I actually had a lot of fun with this one. If I'm going to compare it to everything else that we've seen and that we will continue to watch and review, it's on that scale, it's a view.
Yeah, because like since we've been doing this, people, I'm sure you guys have both gotten this, but people will ask like, what's something really weird that you saw that you liked that I've never heard of? And like going forth, this will be one of the movies that comes to mind for me. Like, yeah, you should watch this fucking movie starring Chloë Grace Moretz on a fucking bomber in World War II, and there are gremlins climbing on the wing, and it's actually pretty awesome. Like, that's just the definition of what I'm doing this for.
Yeah, and now for contrast, Chris, what did you think?
you know, guys, I was so sure I was going to screw this movie, and I kind of
He's going to cool it down.
I'm going to cool down the rhetoric.
You're not going to put Shadow in the Cloud in the bullseye.
Look. This is the United States of America. Gotta give this movie a cue it.
Yes.
I'll give it a cue.
We beat Anaconda.
We beat Anaconda. Anyway, it's a fucking joke that this movie would get 2 view its and a cue it on our, when you look at, if the website were working, I could show you the list. Not a lot of stuff gets 2 view its and a cue it, so it's really benefiting from this national moment we're in, and the seeking unity and peace and love. But yeah, okay, it flies by, so to speak. This movie, it is so short that even if you hate it, you could do worse. There's enough little weird production stuff. Like I said, I think movies that look like they were made for $20 are interesting. And this doesn't look like $20 is an exaggeration. Like, we've seen movies that look like home videos. This looks not like it looks like an asylum picture, but you can tell it was made very efficiently and economically, and they did some really unorthodox things to get there, which I thought was interesting. It's interesting from a production side. That's about. If I keep talking, I'm gonna give it a screw it. So I will just give it a cue it and leave it at that. But I would say put it in your queue, watch it or don't. I would say maybe only watch it if the idea of a asylum film set on a World War II bomber sounds fun. Sure.
I think Asylum is so unnecessarily cruel. But okay.
Yeah. Well, okay, that's what we thought of Shadow in the Cloud. Now we're going to go down to the spoiler turret and spoil everything. Before we do that, make sure to subscribe to the show. Give us a review. 5 stars only. We will accept no less. We will not. What's the line from the X trilogy? We will not live a life that
we don't deserve.
Yeah, we will not accept a review that we don't reserve.
I will not accept a life that I don't. Oh no, fuck it, never mind.
Yeah, it was good enough.
Thanks.
Check us out on social media at EHMONcast on all the major platforms. Check out our Discord. We have a wonderful community over there talking not only about the things that we watch on the show. In fact, I would say that's probably the least of what we talk about over there. Lots of interesting horror-related conversations. You can find a link to that in our show notes.
Yeah, it's like if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I want to hear more about what they thought about Longlegs. Do they have a Patreon? No, it's free. You go on Discord. We all wrote a couple paragraphs after we saw the movie, and you can write your own paragraph too.
It's like Letterboxd, except way fewer people will read your shit.
Yes. I think more people read my shit on the Discord than my Letterboxd, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, we're not on Letterboxd, but
I am.
Chris is.
Amon Chris.
Okay. See you in a minute down in the spoiler cockpit, guys. Welcome back to the show. We're down here in the spoiler cockpit, spoiler turret, whatever you want to call it.
The door's locked. We can't get out of here.
We can't get out of here. We broke the handle off.
Speaking of which, one complaint, nitpick. I wish the movie were noisier. I wanted to hear that brrr and the wind.
Oh, I thought the same thing because there's a big crack in the glass at the bottom of the turret, and I can't imagine what kind of disturbance that would cause inside, but we should hear something.
Even if there wasn't a crack, those planes are so fucking loud, It's like the first. I think it's actually something that's really interesting. These planes, when was the Wright brothers' first flight? 1903 was the Wright brothers' first flight.
Okay.
By the time of World War I, which is 1917, 18, 19, something like that, they're already oh yeah, we're dogfighting in these planes now. We have guns on the planes. We're doing rolls. We're doing all kinds of crazy shit. We got it's crazy to me that you go from a couple guys driving their bicycle off a cliff in 1903 to aerial combat in 1917, and then to this by the 40s.
Dude, men only want one thing, and it's disgusting.
Yeah, they want to put a gun on that
Put
shit.
some weapons on a fucking plane.
No, it is kind of amazing. Human ingenuity is really something to behold, and yet we still don't have flying cars all these years later.
It feels to me like if they had made the first computer in whatever they did in 1956 or whatever, the big refrigerator, the room-sized computer, and then by 1980, the Terminator was fighting our wars for us. Mm-hmm. That's what it feels like. That evolution of technology, crazy. That's beside the point. But I do wish this movie were louder. And there's some parts where they have tender conversations on the plane late in the movie
that you just couldn't have.
And I'm you would not be able to whisper those things to each other because of all the wind and all the engine noise. So,
well, I did not think about this at all.
Took
but I'm
me
so
out.
glad
let's. To be fair, this is a movie that has actual gremlins in it. I don't think it's really interested in being grounded in reality. This is not a Sam Mendes film.
But also, at the same time, even though I just, gently ribbed Chris for bringing this up, it is a pretty realistic film in a lot of other ways. I think they pretty meticulously recreated, an actual turret from a bomber of this time. She's flipping switches and shit. I don't know, maybe it's total bullshit, but it seemed very realistic to me.
Feels real to me, yeah.
Yeah.
Feels real enough, because there's lots of stuff with the mechanics of how they're gonna get her out of there even though the thing is broken, and she has to keep she does a lot of interesting stuff in there with the electronics and whatever to maintain her independence.
Mm-hmm. And that was
so she
and that was part of the fun for me too, because it's the first 30 minutes feels fairly grounded in reality, and then there's fucking gremlins and all kinds of insane kind of action shenanigans. So that was part of why I enjoyed it so much, was just because it took kind of a hard left turn from what felt sort of realistic to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe it should have been fucking louder.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get down to brass tacks. So
it's Cargo 2. That's the big spoiler.
It's Cargo 2. It is cargo in the cloud. It's cargo in the air.
Cargo on a plane.
Yeah, cargo on a plane. What's inside the bag?
They get more and more suspicious.
It's a little baby.
Yeah, they get more and more suspicious of her because of all the shit that's going on. They're all right, why is there a gremlin on my wing? We got someone who said she was British, but she's actually American, and she has this case that she says don't open.
Oh, and at this point too, it's worth noting that at first they don't believe her about the gremlin. She at first I think tries to stay kind of quiet about it, but then they hear her fire a gun at it and whatever. They're like, "What the fuck are you doing down there?" But then somebody else on the upper deck sees the same thing, and gradually they start to believe that this is a legitimate threat. So she's not fucking with us.
So let's find this gremlin generator that she brought on board our plane.
Yeah, exactly. They probably assume that she's a spy or something.
She's got the little silver ball from LONGLEGS.
Yeah.
But it's a baby.
It's a baby.
Yeah.
And it turns out she had the babby with the one good guy who's on the plane, who she cheated on her husband with.
Because her husband was abusive.
Alcoholic.
The husband was Max Landis.
She's fleeing Max. She's fleeing Max Landis on the plane with the babby because he's going to kill her, and her bae knows about it, but of course is keeping it a secret.
Yeah.
And a gremlin throws it out the fucking plane. throws the fucking baby in this like radio leather satchel out of the plane, and she has to hang on to the bottom of the wing, like holding on to straps to go rescue the baby from the gremlin, which is one of the most deranged things I've ever seen.
It's insane. It feels very, from what little I know about Max Landis' films, this feels like something he wrote.
That would make sense.
He seems to be very like over the top. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Does it always look great? No. Does it always make sense? Sometimes I couldn't even tell what she was holding on to. And then the whole perspective shifts, so it looks like she's upright as she's upside down on the plane. But I loved this. It was a thrilling sequence of her thwarting the gremlin or getting it to bug off for a minute so she can actually, reach out and with to reach out and touch Faith, and get a hold of the satchel with like a, random like piece of metal. She's
got the satchel hanging around her neck as she like hangs upside down on the plane.
And I'm like, this whole time I'm like, I'm not a parent, but I don't think you're supposed to shake a baby that much.
No, definitely not.
Like,
but what choice do you have in this situation?
This fucking
let the baby die.
Just gets tossed around this plane for the rest of the movie,
like a football,
little baby football.
But fortunately, it works to some degree because you do know the baby's in there, but you can't see it. So
it does.
You don't have so much sense of all the trauma,
wrap.
the like head trauma the baby is surely sustaining.
Anytime we do see the baby, it looks so cherubic and peaceful and happy. It's like it just went through a fucking tornado, and it's like, nah.
You open it up expecting to see just like a box of guts and blood. No, it's like it's a catalog. It's like a JCPenney catalog baby.
Well, and another, I feel like, cost-saving measure, you see the baby, like twice or something? Yeah,
maybe.
Very little. Yeah. They
just went to the hospital, the maternity ward, and pretended to be the baby's parents for 5 minutes and got one for free.
How do we care about this baby compared to the baby in Cargo?
Oh, well, of course we're going to have very different...
I care a little bit more for this baby because baby's in a box and isn't annoying. So all I'm like is, okay, that and this baby's central to our hero's identity. I don't have to see it. I don't have to hear it.
In Cargo, they just find the baby, right? It's not even his baby? Is that true?
That's been fucking pre-COVID maybe that we saw that. I don't remember a goddamn thing about Cargo.
It doesn't matter. You took the words right out of my mouth. This baby's not annoying.
It's not fussy.
It's not fussy. And also this movie's, like, let's be honest, way more fun than Cargo, which is kind of a dour affair. So when I see the baby hanging from the fucking wing of the plane, I'm like, this is great. This is such a Looney Tune right now. Save the baby, please.
It's like Baby's Day Out.
Yeah. It is.
I mean, surprise, surprise. I cared more about the baby in Cargo than I did about the one in this movie. But also, you don't see it. Like, that's why it's not...
Chekhov's baby.
You understand that it's important to this character, but you don't get the sense of the baby as a character as much as in Cargo, from what I remember. But I don't remember fucking anything about Cargo.
Well, it's a stretch to call either baby a character.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. But what this mostly reminded me of, and I don't think this is a reference point either of you will understand. I don't think either of you have seen this, but in Furious 7, there's a completely insane scene on a plane where Jason Statham is saving Vin Diesel's baby from Charlize Theron's villain. Oh wait, no, that's Fate of the Furious. It's not Furious 7. Yeah.
I can't fact check you on that.
Anyways,
because I know Charlize Theron was only in Fate of the Furious.
Well, she's in the 9th one too, but she's not.
Okay, I'll remember that for Sin and Nerdle.
Yeah, there you go. But it's just an absurd sequence where he's running around like shooting people while also holding a baby in a carrier, and that was kind of what this reminded me. It just. It's so weird because like you feel the emotional stakes for her character, but it still feels kind of like it's just such an outrageous concept that she's running around with this like baby in a satchel hanging from her neck while she's upside down from a plane, among many other things. And so I didn't have as much emotional connection to it, I guess, and was just enjoying the silliness of it all.
And the baby's
That's fair,
in the box.
yeah.
But like, yeah, and you forgot the most important part where like she looks out, she sees this gremlin like pawing at her baby on the plane, and she like leans out of the turret and she's like, "You don't understand how far I will go."
Yeah.
Or something like that.
No, I think that might be actually the line.
It's this really primal moment, yeah. And we're like, oh, she is gonna fucking climb across that wing while the plane is in flight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, so, and it's so silly. So then it's a little dissonant because, like, there's some weighty stuff going on.
It's so
story-wise and character-wise, where she's like, yeah, I got married. I had this abusive alcoholic husband who I'm fleeing. I had this affair. I think it's her husband's baby. And she's like, this is me escaping. She's escaping domestic violence, basically.
Yeah.
And that's what this baby represents to her, basically, like a new choice. It might even be what the gremlin represents, if you want to make this a movie about trauma. So like that's the subtext, and that's what's not even subtext. That's what's the backstory here. But then how the action to which it plays out is just this comic absurdity,
which I found refreshing.
Yeah,
me too. And I think part of why I did find it refreshing was because it all felt really sincere to me. I don't know that they necessarily thought they were doing something like deranged.
No,
I think they did.
I don't think
Really?
they did.
I think they did.
I think you're supposed to take this movie very seriously.
I don't know. Well, so I would tweak. I don't know if you're supposed to take it seriously. I think they took it pretty seriously. And I appreciated that very much.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they took it seriously, like, in the sense that, like, this is not an asylum movie. They're not trying to be campy, but you're definitely meant to, like, hoot and holler and laugh. I mean, there's a scene where she falls down through the hole where the turret once was.
Yeah.
And you think she's dead.
Oh,
and then they
God.
shoot down a plane and it blows up and catapults her back into the plane.
The shockwave of the plane blowing up lifts her back up through space into the plane she just fell out of.
I screamed, and the movie wants you to scream. It does have a sense of humor about it. So
Well, and
for
this,
sure.
and this is where I'm saying, like, this strange, like, amalgamation of whatever Landis's ideas were with Liang's ideas. I mean, and whatever. We are all just conjecturing about whose ideas were whose, but you know, I think we have the right idea.
I bet we could get Max Landis on the show and ask.
I think he's probably pretty bored right now.
I think
We could probably get Roseanne Liang on the show.
He spends a
she
lot.
sounds awesome.
He spends a lot of fucking time online. He's probably gonna leave us a review, send us a hate mail, sue us.
Ooh,
Oh, that would be
Awesome.
so fun
that'd
and
be cool.
interesting.
Yeah.
It would be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because I just was talking about how I think Roseanne Liang is cool, I want to share a few fun facts about her, because I was reading about her because I was like, who fucking made this? You know?
I know. I looked at her filmography and I didn't recognize a damn thing. So it
There's not
me.
a ton. She's made, I think, like 2 or 3 features, I think. And her
She has
first one...
like 15 something directing credits on
Oh,
IMDb.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's mostly TV, because she's most known for a series called Creamery, which sounds fascinating. It's about so it's like a Y the Last Man kind of setup where like a plague wipes out most of the men on Earth, and semen is like tightly controlled to
Oh my
continue like reproducing the human race.
I just saw the title and poster because I looked at I thought it was about like baking or something.
Well, it's about a group of dairy farmers who somehow get like tied up in this like conspiracy. It's like a sci-fi comedy. It's definitely a dark comedy.
Interesting.
I'm really interested to see that. And then her first feature was I think it said the first movie ever made by directed by a Chinese New Zealander, which is kind of a cool milestone. But generally her stuff is well regarded, and I'm very curious to see other things she's done that aren't like some weird hodgepodge of Max Landis's work with her interests.
I think this thing was really well directed. I mean, especially because it requires so much of, when we think of directing, we think about moving the camera, we think about coordinating with the art department and, sound and all of this, but like it's also about directing performances and getting the actor to be in the game. And Yeah, I think she just did a fabulous job with this. And it's only been a couple years, but I was kind of surprised to see that. Actually, that's a lie. She does have a film coming up with Halle Berry.
Oh.
And
Halle Berry needs a win.
I know. Whatever.
I mean, the first theatrically released feature film made by a Chinese New Zealander. Interesting.
What's interesting is that the movie that she's making is called Maud versus Maud, and that's the first name of the character from this movie. And I thought, oh, is it a sequel to Shadow in the Cloud? It's not, unfortunately.
It's too bad.
Yeah. So what happens? She's back on the plane. There's lots of saving the baby, saving the cat. The
Japanese fighters are shooting them left and
shooting
right.
the fuck out of the plane. People just getting annihilated. In like, I don't know. I kind of liked that stuff. I like when she gets back on the plane. One of the men is like, "Oh, there's the love of my life. You made it back to the party," and just gets assassinated immediately.
He gets shot.
He gets shot. Yeah, I shouldn't use that word, right? Cool it down, Steven. Cool it down. Yeah, and there's kind of a lot of that, a lot of like surprise deaths. Like people get picked off pretty quickly, and it's not really lingered on, or you know, you're not meant to feel too much about it. But it's a pretty tense situation, and then they gotta land the plane.
Yeah,
right?
they land the plane
Just like us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're landing now.
Yeah.
Okay. Only a couple minutes more of this, folks.
Yeah, she of course helps land the plane because she's an experienced pilot.
She has what, like 4 hours of flight experience? I think she says.
She has more than that.
200 hours.
No, she says 4 hours. She made like a delivery, and then
No, she says like 200 hours.
Yeah, she has
flying
more hours
planes
than
or-
I don't
really
know.
okay. Maybe
Yeah.
I missed that.
Cause, yeah.
But it's a crash landing. The plane is very compromised at this
It
point.
lands on that fucking island from...
They got to do some flight shit. They
What
got
was
to
that
Denzel
movie?
this plane.
What was that movie
What was that movie?
that you picked with the island?
The island.
Sweetheart.
Oh,
Sweetheart.
Sweetheart, yeah.
They land on the island from Sweetheart.
Wow.
And there's a scare. They think the baby died, but no, the baby's beautiful. There's a scare. They think...
There's a scare. They think the baby's ugly now, but no, it's beautiful.
There's a scare. They think the lover boyfriend's dead, but he's not.
He's fine.
He's fine. They're landed. Everything's fine. They escape the explosion of the plane, and
Just
then
barely, of course. 'cause it's a
Gremlin
movie.
comes back. Gremlin was last seen. Chloë Grace Moretz shot the gremlin, and it seemingly tumbled to its death because it didn't pop its wings out. Because
Oh, it's that.
yeah.
I didn't put it together that it's that gremlin, but I wondered why they lingered on it for so long. As it
It's
was
the same
falling.
gremlin the whole time.
I
isn't
think
it?
so.
I
Yeah.
thought there
Yeah.
were multiple gremlins.
Name of the movie.
I
is-
thought that at first, but I think it's just one.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I might have to watch it again.
There you go.
To pitch this movie, she went on the whiteboard and wrote Gremlins and then scratched off the
Dude, you know when someone reboots fucking Gremlins, they're gonna do that. Gremlin.
Yeah, but the Gremlin's back, and it's it's another one of these sort of overwrought girl power moments here, where she's like, you think I won't, and goes out there into the water.
Listen, you know what? Loved it. That was the part where I was cackling, but also not with derision. I just enjoyed the fuck out of her, like going mano a mano, like fucking MMA with this fucking gremlin.
Yeah.
She grabs its wrist in the end and slashes its throat with its
With its
own
own
like
claw,
hook
yeah.
hand. Amazing. And yeah, there are a few shots where the CG doesn't look great, but I was just
great.
like, let's fucking go.
And I just like LOL'd when she ripped the sleeve off before it. It's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's cool, I guess.
Yeah, because her arm has been in a sling for much of the film.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And then she goes and she retrieves her baby, and she watches the plane burn, and she watches the like pinup girl art decal on the side of the plane bubbling and melting in the fire as she breastfeeds her baby against the idyllic white glowing screen. Do you get it?
You know what? I didn't actually think about the symbolism of the pinup girl decal burning, but I'm glad you called that out.
Yeah. So, feminist film. Nothing wrong with that. Overwrought though, like I said.
If we weren't cooling it down, I wonder what he would have said in place of that.
And then over the then over the credits, like we said,
a woman surviving, nothing wrong with that.
Well, I'm like, I don't know. You could dissect it if you want to. Like, I like someone, I think Steven made a good point about,
finally,
like, it's like, oh, is it that, okay, she actually has value because she's engaged in combat? Like, is that the point? Like, oh, are they saying women, it's not enough that women, like, had value on the home front or, in the imaginations of the people they're fighting, but they have to actually be there killing people to be cool? Because I don't know if...
I don't think so. Whatever. That's a tried and true, like, sort of dichotomy that gets brought up about women in particularly action movies. Like, you have to, the dichotomy is either you have to be exactly like a man, you have to be in the body of a woman, but doing all the, like, tough talk and the strut and whatever and the punching people and shooting people that a man would, or you lean into a more feminine mode. And it's like, you don't necessarily have to choose, and there's not necessarily a statement just in one of those choices, I think. Mm-hmm. But, whatever. It's the old 3 men sit around and dissect what's the best way to represent a woman on film.
Yeah, there was a little bit in this, though, like I said before we went down to the spoiler cockpit, where, like, like in sometimes in movies, like, the only way to be taken seriously as a woman is to be a man. And there were moments in this where I thought it was gonna, like, go full bore into that, and then I realized, like, no, like, I just really like this character, and I like that she's going over the top, and I like that we're getting away from the sort of chauvinist rhetoric and all of that, and we're just focusing on, this is just an action movie. She's trying to save her baby.
Mm-hmm.
It saved itself in the end for me.
Yeah, and I think in the context of the time, it's worth recognizing the contributions of the women who actually did do this. Because, frankly, I didn't know there was a women's Air Force at the time. So, like, sure, let's make a weird fucking sci-fi movie about a woman who was in that.
So that's what
I think that's cool.
That's what I think that's cool too. And then the credits of the movie, as we mentioned, like, have all these real historic images and film clips of women who served and flew planes and everything during World War II. And it's a part of history that I didn't really know about.
I want to interview an actual, like, women's Air Force veteran. I want their take on this movie.
I think you're too late for World War II. There's got to be someone still alive.
There
weren't that many of them, though.
Some 97-year-old.
There weren't that many. But here's my thing. Like, if you're trying to get people to appreciate these real-world women who have been overlooked by history for decades.
No.
Yeah. You're saying, okay, well, let's take that character and pretend that, make you think they're cool because they're punching gremlins or, blowing shit up. Yeah. And so that rings a little false for me, but it's whatever. And then there's also, the motherhood, the tried and true, like, does a woman have value if she doesn't breastfeed a baby, have a baby, etc.? There's all that kind of stuff too. They hit that pretty thick too.
It's similar to what I was saying earlier about the locker room talk. Like, when it was first revealed that this was a baby, I was like, really? I think I had, like, a Steven and Chris reaction to it, actually. I was like, really? A baby? And then for some reason, I was just so swept up in the wave of everything that was going on in this that I didn't care. I was like, yep, it's a baby in a satchel, and we're... I
wasn't bothered by it.
I've described the reverse wing walking scene numerous times, but that was where I was just like... My brain did cartwheels trying to process what I was even seeing, and then it was just like, nope, we're just accepting this. We're just going with it. And it wasn't a conscious choice. It was just like, I'm sold enough at this point that I'm on board. So, sure. Like, yeah, I get the criticism. I'm there with you. It won me over
it's
somehow.
Fine. I'm not saying damn this movie. It's just, I don't know, things.
Screw it.
Things that add up to me just not really being able to appreciate this as a really an effective feminist film for me, my male ass. So. Anyone who is a woman can write on our Discord and either cancel us or share your own thoughts or whatever the hell.
Yeah, so what are we going to be sitting on our male asses watching next month? I believe it's the wheel's turn, right? The wheel of death.
That diabolical wheel.
Finally let someone who's not a man decide what movie we're watching.
Yeah, we're going to turn it over to AI.
It might as well be AI. Okay. Yeah, we should start saying it. Hey, we have an AI wheel. It's the same wheel we've always used, but now it's AI.
Wheel GPT, baby.
AI driven. Okay, we're going to load every damn horror movie on Netflix into a
I'm not convinced that you're using a wheel right now.
Wheel.
Let's open ChatGPT and just tell it pick a random movie from Netflix.
Sure. All right, let's do that. It's going to
use the energy of a light bulb or whatever the fuck you said in the chat.
It's going to take a kilowatt of electricity and 30 gallons of water, and we'll ask ChatGPT what sort of adjectives do we want to give it?
None. Just say pick a random horror movie for me to watch on Netflix right
that
now.
Is currently streaming on Netflix. You got to be specific.
That is currently streaming on Netflix. Yeah.
All right, pick a random horror movie for me to watch that is currently streaming on Netflix in the U.S.
It's going to pick Anaconda.
That hasn't been featured already on
the podcast every horror movie on Netflix.
We're gonna watch Veronica.
No, we're not. We've already watched Veronica.
Pick another one.
Oh right, I forgot about that.
His House.
Already done.
These are all the normie.
The
picks.
highlights.
Pick a more obscure one.
Tell it to pick one that's not been featured on the podcast. See if it.
Oh, it doesn't. It's not gonna know.
It might. It might have access to Apple Podcasts or something.
It might have access to our website.
Well, that's not going to help us.
Pick a horror movie on Netflix that
pizza.
hasn't yet been covered by the Every
so funny
Horror
that its first pick was Veronica
on Netflix podcast.
What was that kid's name in Veronica? Or at least what we called him?
Oh, all right. We're going to watch The Babysitter.
Oh.
Didn't we do that?
No.
Oh, I've seen it, though. Okay.
A horror movie on Netflix that hasn't yet been covered by the Every Horror Movie on Netflix podcast is The Babysitter 2017.
That's actually been on my list for a while.
Directed by Mick G, one of my favorite directors. This film is a horror comedy
this is such a Joker episode.
that follows a young boy who discovers his babysitter is part of a satanic cult that will stop at nothing to keep him quiet. It's a fun, bloody, and entertaining ride, making it a great choice for a horror night. You can check out the full list of movies they have reviewed so far on their official website. See, well, AI doesn't know anything. That's literally what it says.
Wow. Ask it if the website is broken.
Is that website working or broken? The Every Horror Movie on Netflix podcast website is working. You can see, I did it. You can access the list. All right.
Ask it to fix the website for us.
Can you fix the?
Well, but also ChatGPT is only index content from like 2018 or something. So probably what it's looking at, like our website was still working.
Oh
then.
yeah. Getting a window into
give a bullshit answer for that. All right, so thanks ChatGPT. That only costs 6 acres of forest to come up with that pick.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna watch. What year was that? The Babysitter.
2017.
2017 is The Babysitter, directed by Mick G. I've seen this movie.
That's still like a new movie in my mind.
I've seen it. I really enjoyed it, and I hope I do again, and I hope you guys do as well.
Wait, quick question. Wasn't Brett Ratner associated with that? I was going to say Brett Ratner directed it.
Ooh.
I don't think so.
Because I was going to say we're continuing our theme of like films
there
by
was a
canceled
sequel. Did
creators.
he direct a sequel?
Oh, maybe. I didn't even know there
Killer
was a sequel.
Queen? I didn't see the second one.
All right, anyways, Land the Plane. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Land the Plane. And also, Brett Ratner, come on, we're cooling it down, Patrick.
Yeah,
we're not talking about sex pests.
Doesn't look
I mean, other than
Max Landis. All right, well, thanks. This has been a blast. Thanks for listening. This has been Every Horror Movie on Netflix. I've been Steven. I've been Chris.
And I'm Patrick.
And we will see you in August to review The Babysitter. Bye-bye.